In the quiet affluence of Maple Grove, where mansion-lined streets whispered tales of old money and new fortune, a yellow school bus wound its way through the morning mist like a faithful guardian. Behind its wheel sat William Reynolds, a man whose weathered hands and gentle smile masked a storm of desperation brewing beneath his carefully maintained composure. For 5 years he had transported the children of the town's elite to Oakwood Private Elementary, watching through his rearview mirror as the sons of tech moguls, real estate tycoons, and corporate executives chattered about their latest gaming consoles and upcoming vacation plans. William took pride in being more than just a driver to these children. He was their first greeting in the morning, their last goodbye in the afternoon, and sometimes their confidant in between. His bus became a mobile sanctuary where kindergarteners could find comfort when missing home, where third graders could share their excitement about upcoming birthday parties, and where even the most privileged children learned the value of a kind word and a helping hand. When a child needed to contact their parents, William would readily offer his personal phone, a small gesture that earned him the trust of both the students and their powerful parents. But beneath this facade of contentment, William's life was unraveling like a poorly knitted sweater. His wife's medical bills from her battle with cancer had drained their savings, and her passing had left him with a mountain of debt that grew steeper with each passing month. Collection agencies called relentlessly. His modest apartment's rent was 3 months overdue, and the final notice from the bank regarding his car loan sat unopened on his kitchen table, its contents already known and dreaded. Every morning, as he drove past the sprawling estates and manicured lawns, the disparity between his passenger's world and his own became increasingly unbearable. He watched as children stepped onto his bus, wearing shoes that cost more than his monthly salary, carrying lunchboxes filled with gourmet meals, while he subsisted on dollar store coffee and day-old bread. The injustice of it all festered in his mind, transforming from bitter observation to dangerous contemplation. The plan began as a whisper in the darkest corners of his thoughts, growing louder with each final notice, each threatening phone call, each sleepless night spent calculating impossible mathematics of survival. William had always considered himself a good man, but good men, he had learned, could be driven to desperate acts when pushed against the wall of financial ruin. He began to map out alternate routes, studying satellite images of abandoned properties on the outskirts of town, and methodically preparing for an act that would forever alter not only his life, but the lives of those who had come to trust him. On a crisp autumn morning, when the leaves painted the streets in shades of gold and crimson, William deviated from his usual route. Instead of turning left toward Oakwood's prestigious campus, he guided the bus onto the highway, his heart pounding against his ribs like a prisoner demanding release. The children, initially oblivious to the change, continued their typical morning conversations, their innocence making the weight of his betrayal even heavier. The abandoned warehouse he had chosen sat like a forgotten giant on the outskirts of town, its broken windows and graffiti-covered walls a stark contrast to the pristine neighborhoods he had left behind. As he pulled the bus into the cavernous structure, the reality of what he was doing crashed over him like a wave of ice water. With trembling hands but a steady voice, he announced his intentions to the now silent children, demanding a ransom that would solve all his financial troubles, $50 million in exchange for their safe return. The hours that followed were a blur of fear, regret, and mounting tension. William paced the length of the bus, his phone clutched in his hand like a lifeline, waiting for the calls he knew would come. The children's initial shock had given way to quiet sobs and whispered prayers, their trust in him shattered like the warehouse windows that surrounded them. What William didn't know was that his past kindness had sown the seeds of his undoing. James Chen, father of 8-year-old Michael, remembered the day his son had borrowed William's phone to call home about a forgotten science project. Being the CEO of a cybersecurity firm, Chen had instinctively traced and logged the number, a habit born from years of dealing with corporate espionage. This digital breadcrumb, combined with the resources of several powerful families and the full force of local law enforcement, would prove to be William's undoing. As SWAT teams surrounded the warehouse, their movements precise and practiced, William realized the futility of his plan. The world he had created, the respect he had earned, the trust he had built, the life he had lived, all of it had crumbled like the decay around him. The morning sun filtered through the broken windows, casting prison bar shadows across the bus's yellow exterior, a fitting metaphor for what his future held. The negotiations were brief. William, seeing the full weight of law enforcement arrayed against him, surrendered without resistance. As he was led away in handcuffs, he caught one last glimpse of the children being reunited with their parents, the same children who had shared their stories with him, who had trusted him, who had seen him as a protector rather than a threat. The sight would haunt him for years to come. In the aftermath, Maple Grove struggled to comprehend how their trusted bus driver had transformed into a desperate criminal. The story made national headlines, not just for the dramatic rescue, but for the questions it raised about the invisible lines that divide communities, the crushing weight of medical debt, and the desperate choices people make when backed into corners of their own making. William Reynolds disappeared into the criminal justice system, but his story became a cautionary tale whispered in both mansions and modest homes throughout Maple Grove. Some saw him as a villain who betrayed the most sacred trust, the safety of children. Others viewed him as a victim of a system that could push a good man to contemplate the unthinkable. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in the complex middle ground where desperation meets choice and where the line between right and wrong becomes blurred by circumstance. Years later, the yellow school buses of Maple Grove still run their routes, carrying precious cargo between pristine homes and privileged education. But now they carry more than just children. They carry the weight of memory, the burden of lessons learned, and the understanding that sometimes the greatest dangers come not from strangers with evil intentions, but from good people driven to desperate acts by the crushing weight of circumstance. The children who lived through that autumn morning grew up carrying a different kind of education, one that taught them about the complexity of human nature, the thin line between security and desperation, and the understanding that sometimes the most important stories aren't found in their expensive textbooks, but in the real-world experiences that shape their understanding of humanity's capacity for both compassion and desperation. As for William, his story became more than just a cautionary tale. It became a mirror reflecting the hidden fractures in society, the vast chasms between those who have and those who struggle, the devastating impact of medical debt, and the desperate measures that seem impossible until they become inevitable. His actions would forever be remembered not just as a crime, but as a testament to the complex nature of human morality and the price of desperation. In the end, the story of William Reynolds and the children of Maple Grove serves as a reminder that every person, no matter how trustworthy they appear on the surface, carries their own burdens, fights their own battles, and can be pushed to breaking points that seem unimaginable until they're reached. It's a story that continues to echo through the streets of Maple Grove, carried on the autumn wind like leaves of gold and crimson, whispering warnings about the price of desperation and the complex nature of trust, betrayal, and redemption in a world where the distance between right and wrong is sometimes measured in the dollars and cents of survival